bari biyo ken kontan batale bari inatal pour kanna bullo ko jibe
ito kontantale makura bari ala ya lonte man kontande makura kana nyina ko teninte belbe tuba dudula kilimoto
o moto nyalti kay
ngokko di baka to kinan jang pour yena dula dada ni tata na dula to makura ala ya lon njuso malla ama hani futa dula to dula din anu birite loro commencé woni bitema ama hani me
non ama me to nyalom
ke bara fonye mune muy la kulloti
ndela kullu balu walti
balu way fo balu ko loro fanankel
ikal loro fanankele
ñin kunna soniyata ta www.baluwo.com anin baluwo isela bulloran jorangol be sang anila kudula asatare mambata jorangol membu ko cementol kenyo babarol nil peruol woni nga nyon jamal ta baluwo.com yin jorangol be sang ila dinkira bado adungite batala je anin baluwo ifangole marate la kudula.
Islamic microfinance is becoming an increasingly popular mechanism for poverty alleviation, especially for developing countries around the world. This microfinance service adheres to the principles of Islam as a form of social responsibility. Yona Islamic Microfinance is the Islamic microfinance of choice in the Gambia, trustworthy and reliable. At Yona Islamic Microfinance, we provide savings products, current accounts, financing products in conformity with Islam. In addition, Yona Islamic Microfinance also offers local and international remittances, takaful fund, management of zakat, management of awqaf, trading and investment, and building of strategic partnerships to bring financial services to the doorstep of the poor with donor projects, madrasas, youth organizations, women groups, and farmer organizations. Make a choice with Yona Islamic Microfinance today. For more information on Yona Islamic Microfinance, call 377-2151 or 9832-151 or visit Yona head office at Tipa Garage, Bakote, or visit any Yona branch located countrywide near you.
Welcome to yet another press conference. This one is special in the sense that it is about the problem that everybody is talking about, the constitutional impasse, and what's the way forward. That is the theme of the press conference. And we have the Secretary General, Halifa Sallah, to deliver on this particular theme.
We thank the media for being present in large numbers because of the importance of this conversation. We are here gathered to talk about what makes us who we are, why we call ourselves Gambians, why we have a nation called the Gambia. Nothing is more important than what we are here to talk about. That is the Constitution of the Republic. We all heard that the process that was on to build or make a constitution has been aborted. Many are asking why. Many are asking what the way forward is. This is what led us to convene this press conference to address the burning issues of our day. Constitutions have nature and characteristics based on the type of system that exists. We have developed as a nation to become a republic. That is why a constitution is so important in our existence, that each of us from nursery school should have been prepared to know what a constitution actually is. The building of a constitution has fundamental principles. You elect National Assembly members to be your lawmakers. And no nation can be a civilized nation without laws for all of us to observe in common. That is why we talk about the rule of law. All of us under the law, equal under the law, none superior to the other. That is why we elect those we deem fit to go into the National Assembly to make the laws that we would have made for ourselves. And Section 100 of the Constitution says that the legislative power, lawmaking power of the land is introduced in the form of bills that must be passed by the National Assembly, assented to by the President for a law to be made. These are very important offices in our country. And that is why, even in the standing orders of Parliament, it is emphasized that you have three types of bills that are based on the requirements of the Constitution. Section 100 of the Constitution affirms that the members of Cabinet and the National Assembly members are the ones who are empowered to introduce bills in the National Assembly, pass it, and then it goes to the President for assent. But the Constitution sees certain bills to be so fundamental to our existence that they do not believe, it does not believe that it should be transformed into law by that simple mechanism of passing it in the National Assembly and then sending it to the President for its assent. The Constitution emphasizes that all the entrant clauses will require to be brought to you at a referendum for you to decide whether those entrant clauses could be touched. And that is why each of us must see himself, herself, as a lawmaker. This discourse should be of interest to you. Why are we here today? We have a 1997 Constitution. In 2016, a change of government occurred. And those who collaborated to form a coalition to change the government emphasized the need to look at the 1997 Constitution again in order to examine all the defects and then provide remedies to those defects. That was their commitment, their promise, our promise, the promise of a coalition, the promise of a people, to look at its instrument and improve it. A CRC was established to conduct consultation with the people and prepare a draft which will be forwarded to the president, and their mission would have been accomplished. But that is not the end of the journey. For that draft to ultimately become the constitution of the Third Republic, it had to go through parliamentary procedure. Parliamentary jurisprudence had to be exercised for that draft to change from being a draft and become a constitution. And the requirement of the Constitution under Section 226 is that that draft would have to be transformed into a bill that will be published for 3 months for your notice. And then for no less than 10 days, a second publication for your notice, so that the whole Gambian nation will know that what was a draft is now a bill that must go through the process to become the Constitution of the Republic. Eventually, that bill came before the National Assembly. At its second reading, because of the constitutional requirement that 3/4 of the majority of the National Assembly must pass it to go to a next stage, that did not happen. It was thrown out. Presidents, diplomats, intellectuals, many people intervened to see how Gambia could come up with a constitution for a Third Republic. But ultimately, the executive, by its own volition, without much consultation with those who hold political office, decided to bring another bill to the National Assembly to start the promulgation process of the Constitution of a Third Republic. That also went to the second reading and could not get the 3/4 majority and was also thrown out. We, the Gambian people, are now to ask ourselves the fundamental question: what do we do next? Are we to allow ourselves to be held hostage by those we have given authority to serve us? Or do we need to open up a national conversation and involve them in that conversation so that we find a way out for ourselves and our country? This press conference is convened to motivate the Gambian people to begin that conversation, that national conversation, for a way forward, for a better constitution, for a Third Republic. Still, both are possible. But we have to make fundamental decisions to make either one possible. But one must be possible. Otherwise, we are doomed. where do we start? We start by explaining what a constitution-making process is and what a bill, a constitutional promulgation bill, is. There are many misconceptions. The 2020 draft, which became a bill, is not meant to be a perfect document. The 2024 draft, which became a bill, is not a perfect document. These bills are brought to the National Assembly for scrutiny. They are not brought for adoption. Those who drafted the bills are not lawmakers. They have knowledge of law drafting, but they are not lawmakers. Let me give you an example to show the imperfection of these bills that were brought to the National Assembly for scrutiny. We all know how important women are. They constitute more than half the population. Now, if you want to look at the 1997 Constitution and transform it into an APRC document, that it is, I love the former president, if he brought a document, then I should not touch it. If that is your mindset, and you are a woman, Section 28 is just simply telling you men and women must be equal in dignity. And we must provide opportunities for women to have participation in economic, political, social life. You go to Section 214, it's a directive principle of state policy. In the composition of cabinet, women must be fairly represented. But what is fairly represented? 215, economically, they must be given equal opportunities. These are principles. But since 1997, how many women found themselves in the National Assembly, in cabinet, enjoying equal opportunities? It did not exist. And women movements have been shouting that women have not been properly represented. In fact, they have been shortchanged. But that is the language of the 1997 Constitution. There is no quota anywhere that says that women will have 30% of representation in all the representative institutions. It does not say so. So how can any woman take ownership of that as your document? It is inadequate. It stated principles, but gave you no authority to participate as equal. So that law is inadequate. Here comes the 2020 draft. It aims to address that. You go to the schedule that is established for that, and what they said is that you will have elections for 14 positions in the National Assembly. 53 seats, 14 will now be allocated to women so that election will take place for those 14 seats, 2 per region. and then 2 people who will be representing the disabled. But it did not even say what the gender characteristic of those 2 people should be. It's just 2 people, which means you can even select 2 males. So you see, that type of representation is what the 2020 draft aimed to give. But then there is a law under the Women's Act, which was promulgated to improve the Women's Act, which says that in terms of political representation, you should have 30% representation of women. So that 2020 draft that became a bill of the CRC is inadequate. It has not reached to that quota. And it has not properly represented disabled women. It did not say 1 man, 1 woman who are disabled. It said just 2 disabled persons. So that law is still inadequate. So if you embrace as a woman that that document should not be touched, then you are yet to know what is in the document and you are yet to know what your right is. That document was meant to be touched. That's the thrust of my argument. And now the 2024. Let's say you are a woman supporter of NPP. In the quota that they established in the schedule, what was 14, they reduced it to 7. And not only 7, instead of elections, now the parties that won in the regions will be given the right to select a representation. How they were going to do that is still questionable, because the region comprises many constituencies. So if this win, you won there, so how will you ultimately determine? Not only that, from election to 5 people being nominated, you go back to nomination. Who on earth, who is a woman, regardless whether you are NPP or any party, would accept that to be a document you should embrace? So what is the argument? The argument is that the 2020 draft had many shortcomings. The 2024 draft had many shortcomings. There were intentions provided by those who drafted it. And those intentions were converted into a bill, and the bill given to the National Assembly for scrutiny. Therefore, in 2020 as well as in 2024, the duty of your lawmakers was to look at these bills, scrutinize them, temper them, so that they meet your satisfaction. How could they do that? What the law says is that the bill will go through the first reading to be introduced, and second reading, where Standing Order 66 says that the principles will be a subject of debate and voting. Because to make a law, you have to explain why you are making it. Law is made for a purpose, for an object. And that is why the Constitution says under Section 101 that before you introduce a law, you must state those principles, the policies embodying it, the defects you intend to remedy, the purpose for introducing it. There is a reason. And the National Assembly members must question the reason behind the laws. And their voting will start from examining the reasons. And Standing Order 64 emphasizes that when they look at all the reasons and the objects, the purpose, then they can also, under Standing Order 66, vote on the principles. I hope I am being very clear. Law is made for a purpose, either to prohibit something, to prevent something, to promote something, to protect something, to preserve something. Law is made for a purpose. It says your lawmakers must develop the knowledge and base of examining the purpose of a law before they even proceed to examine the content. So during the second reading, the debate should be about principles. And I've clearly showed you the inadequacies of the 1997 Constitution, the 2020 draft, the 2024 draft. So those are the inadequacies that should have been examined and lay the foundation that there is need to interrogate the Constitution and improve its content. Let me give you another example of inadequacy. Look at the diaspora. We talk about diaspora voting, diaspora voting, diaspora voting. But if you look at the 1997 Constitution, it says that every Gambian above 18 years has a right to be registered as a voter and to vote. That is established by the Constitution. Something is said there to be registered under a constituency, which, if it becomes problematic, you could have amended 30 years, 20-something years ago. But it did not pose any difficulty because the Elections Act became clear that Gambians abroad should be registered under Section 11 of the Election Act. And under Section 141, that they should vote in presidential elections. Every Gambian who lives here and go abroad came from somewhere. You originated somewhere. You originated from a constituency. What is the difficulty in registering that person under that constituency? What difficulty is there if the will is there? That is why it's just utter neglect. That is the reason why Gambians in the diaspora could not vote. Now you want to amend that. And the 2020 draft is saying that the election law that should accompany the Constitution should progressively introduce the registration of Gambians abroad. I hope Gambians abroad are listening to me very carefully. Go and look at your 2020 draft, the section that deals with representation, that deals with election laws. It is saying to register you should be progressively done. You have a right. Why should that right be progressively given? And in the 2024 draft, the same language is what is there. Who in the diaspora will take ownership of these two documents? They all need scrutiny and remedy. And that is why the National Assembly is the appropriate body to do that. And they are given all the powers to do it because they are the lawmakers. Nobody can dictate to them. The 2020 draft was prepared by an independent body of competent Gambians. They did what they believe Gambians wanted and could afford to do. So now, those who were elected were the ones who should have examined whether what they did was adequate and add whatever was necessary to make it fit for purpose. The same thing with 2024, prepared by the executive. But once they bring it to the National Assembly, that's where it stops. They have no authority to impose on anybody so that it will pass to become a law. So if the executive fails to consult, it was now the opportunity of the National Assembly to show the executive that what they failed to do, the National Assembly will do. That's where the National Assembly should have enhanced its image and integrity and clout. How should that have happened? The second reading should have been the basis of criticizing all that, the process of bringing the bill, the lack of consultation, anything could have been said at that time. Accuse the executive of whatever you wish. But then to show that, let's proceed to the important stage of doing our work for the Gambian people. And the Constitution says that from the second reading, if they allowed it to pass, they will go to the committee stage, and in that committee stage, this is where the scrutiny should have started. The whole Gambian nation would have been invited to send their opinions, just like I am analyzing now. Of course, we would have analyzed the whole Constitution and sent it to them, as we did in 1997. It's our duty. Thinkers would have done it. Political parties would have done it. Religious leaders would have done it. So scrutiny would have been exercised. And then they would have prepared a report on the opinions of all of us on the content of the Constitution. Then they, as National Assembly members, will go to the consideration stage, and clause by clause, they will scrutinize and vote, clause by clause, scrutinize and vote up to the end. Then they vote, if three-quarter majority accept what is left, that is taken to the IEC to prepare for a referendum within 6 months. Then the people will be consulted, and the debate will still continue. And from that debate, we would have reached a national consensus if Gambians are really Gambians, if the nation really belongs to us, if each of us is interested in having a constitution that is fit for purpose, then why should we be divided on its content? We should have been able to build consensus. And in fact, that is the process of nation building. constitution making is a process of nation building, because you are building the mindset of a people on how they are supposed to be governed. Nothing is more important to a nation than the constitution making process. All of us should have spoken with one voice to allow each to scrutinize, criticize, and come up with suggestions, bold suggestions, so that ultimately we all agree that our future is secure under that fundamental law of the land which will govern our existence. This did not happen in 2020. It has not happened in 2024. We'll be having other programs, public lectures on constitutions and constitution building, but this is meant for a specific purpose, to awaken all of us, to know that if we are not involved, we'll be left behind. If we do not take charge of our destiny, we'll be victims of blind destiny. It is now the people who should speak. That's why we are addressing you. The lawmakers have spoken. It is now your time to speak. If you do agree that the process was to move from the second reading to the committee stage so that the Constitution will be scrutinized, it was not voting to adopt it, as many had thought in 2020. I was among those, I was in the National, who supported that it should pass the second reading. But the objective of supporting it was not to adopt a constitution, is to bring it so that I could scrutinize it. And that was the duty of all the National Assembly members at that time, and still their duty. But this is what had happened. Where do we go from here? When you make a decision in the National Assembly, you cannot bring that back for consideration, just like that. As it stands, the 2024 draft is dead. Is it possible to bring it back to life? Yes. Before the end of this session of the National Assembly. Because under Standing Order 29, paragraph 3, when you make a decision, you cannot bring it back unless you rescind that decision. Which means that they can introduce a motion to rescind their decision. All it requires under the standing orders is that whoever is going to introduce the motion will submit at the table office, your proposal of a motion to rescind the decision that they have taken. And if it is introduced within 5 clear days, they can consider the possibility of introducing that motion for a debate, and if the National Assembly members adopt it, they can revoke their decision and then move back where they were to start the process. That is possible. But if that is not done until the end of their session, then that is it. I don't want to speculate whether their session is on or is not on. I'm telling you what the situation is. If the session ends Then you go back to our situation, where I tried to introduce a motion after the end of the session, hoping, as the standing order says, that the Speaker will allow that motion, but it was not allowed, so precedence has been set in that regard. Then the motion would not be introduced, and the 2024 bill is dead. Then what next? What next is what Section 226 was meant for. Section 226 was not meant for wholesale transformation of a constitution. It had provision for amendment of a constitution. That is constitution building. What is required now, with immediacy, is the executive to engage in consultation. And we all look at the 1997 Constitution and make bold recommendation for its amendment. The 1997 Constitution does not have a term limit. You can be there for eternity as long as the people concur. You can use patronage to buy votes, you can do anything which is against the law, but just to sustain yourself in power. As long as the people are in a position to be bought, then you can stay in power as long as you wish, relying on the politics of patronage. Some can get frustrated and say, let's take this street. You keep on taking streets, and governments may not change, but then wherever streets were taken, one does not see the ultimate consequences of a public order controlled by a people whose aims and aspirations are being addressed. We don't have to become hostages. We are supposed to be free. Governments are supposed to exist for us. We are not supposed to exist just to oil the machinery of government with taxation. So in essence, we can amend the Constitution to introduce a term limit. There was a provision under Section 48 of the Constitution where if you don't have 50% plus in an election, you have second round. It was amended. It can even be restored by the current National Assembly without a referendum, because it's not an entrenched clause. We need women representation, 30%. And the National Assembly members can all agree so that that can be part of the amendments, where you can even have women alone elections for that 30%. And women can stand for political parties or independent candidates, but it's women participating to occupy 30% of the seats in the National Assembly. That can be to ensure that this time is not just a principle being asserted. It is a law being affirmed. Diaspora voting and registration. We can emphasize that it happens. Come up with all the amendments that are necessary. Civil servants, under a decree in 1996, they could participate in election, be paid during the time of their participation until 5 days after the election. If they lose, they go back to their jobs. 1997 Constitution, they decided to restrict their participation by demanding 1 year leave without pay to participate. And 2020, they reduced it to 6 months. That's why I'm saying none of this document is perfect. And this current one, reduced it to 6 months, and then you can see the ambiguity, mentioning that you could go back to your job. A law that has ambiguity is not a good law. So all this needed to be scrutinized. Now we can scrutinize all that and come up with a decision that will serve our purpose. So our emphasis is that as a people, whether we are part of NGOs, political parties, or the civil society organizations, religious groups, we should all fall back to our groups and engage in that discussion as to the type of amendments we need. And we formulate it and then throw it into the public space for a debate. So that ultimately I am convinced, whether it's the UN, ECOWAS, AU, our partners will come to consult all of us. And if all of us agree that we have a bulk of amendments that we don't want to compromise on, this, we insist, must become part of the 1997 Constitution. I am convinced that our voice or voices would be heard. On that note, I would want to say that Pdois has been engaged in real conversation on the way forward for this nation. And we are convinced that what is missing is a national agenda. We cannot transform the nation into a partisan agenda because all of us own this nation together. So there is need for a national agenda. Then you can convert that into your partisan agenda. So the conversation should start now. A constitution belongs to all of us. It is designed to govern all of us. So it is important to all of us. Let us all work together then to make it fit for our purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Halifa. The objective of the press conference is to inject clarity into the post-rejection of the 2024 draft constitution. Now, the floor is open for questions. But first, the questions will be limited to the theme of the press conference, and no question will be accepted until that is exhausted. And before asking a question, introduce yourself and the media house you are representing. Anybody who wants to take the floor? Yes?
I have a number of questions.
Introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Yusuf Taylor. I'm the editor for Ascambia Media.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the press conference and for your stand in the past and currently with regards to the Constitution. So my first question is directed to, actually to you. But I will first go to Honorable first, because in your previous press conference, we did publish an article where you talked about the draft constitution, and that you mentioned about Parliament.
Impose anything on those people. I think you agree with that, because you have the third reading where you still need 3/4 majority. So if you can throw it away in the second reading, If you allow the process to go up to the end, you see that those areas where you want them to change, they have not. Why wouldn't you then reject it at the third reading? And then give an explanation why you are rejecting it at the third reading. So you understand that. Number two, you see, we should not confuse two realities. The women's bill that was brought just simply took the schedule in the 2020 draft and wanted it to be transformed. And they wanted it to lead to an amendment of the 1997 Constitution. But it was flawed in many ways, because the 1997 Constitution, under Section 88, already created the number of seats in the National Assembly, 53, with 5 nominated. So if you want to incorporate 14 members there, you would have to also amend that very provision. And that was not a subject of amendment. They just wanted incorporation. Do you understand? So there was a flaw there. Number two, as I've already shown you, even that provision had some limitations. Because, number one, it did not even fit the 30% that is the quota that is anticipated. Number two, the issue of disabled women had not been addressed. So it's not only that it did not pass, but there were shortcomings. You needed more consultation on that bill before being introduced in the National Assembly. So my conclusion is that the issue is not about UDP, Pdois, NPP, or it's about the Gambian people. I've lived long enough to see what happened in 1996. And the very people who were criticizing that the 1996 referendum was doctored to have a soldier's constitution, what are they going to say today? And at that material time, we were telling them decrees were monarchical instruments. And to reject a constitution meant that we were acknowledging that decrees will continue. The supremacy of the AFPRC. That it was better to have a half-hearted constitution than a full-hearted decree governing the affairs of the nation. But they would not even listen to what we were saying at that time. But it is now that people are becoming very clear on the content and see that no matter how half-hearted the content of the 1997 Constitution was, it served our purpose of removing the very person who came through the barrel of the gun, through the ballot box. So after that, what other moral authority do we have not to improve on that and bequeath to a future generation an instrument that is fit for purpose, instrument that can be compared with the instrument of any other country on the face of the earth. Those who do not have that objective are not prepared to build a future that is fit for all of us. That's what I'm saying. We must be prepared to build a better future, a fairer Gambia, a better Gambia. If we are not ready to do that, well, that's our opinion. That's how we wish to govern, and that's how we wish to lead. So you don't blame anybody who wish to lead that way and govern that way. It's those who are governed who should now ask themselves the question, is that how we wish to be governed? That is the fundamental question. And that's why we are convening this press conference. The Gambian people should go back and ask themselves the question, what do they want? What do we want as a people? That is the question.
So, my second question, the way you can Gambians to ask, what do they want? Is this the way that they want to be governed? And I want to believe that in 2016, when Gambians were going to force to remove the army, a fundamental campaign message that the coalition was giving to Gambians was that there will be a change of the current law, which is the 1997 Constitution. And now that 8 years is back, we still have the 1997 after 2 attempts. And many people want to hold, because all of us as a nation, I want to believe, are responsible for these failures. But individually also, people have to be held or to be liable to this. And you know that constitution building starts from the top, it starts from the government, even though every political player has a tax and every citizen has the role to play in this. But most people blame President Barrow for these 2 attempts under his government for a new constitution to come, and it has failed. And they hold him individually also liable for this failed attempt. Would you agree to that, sir?
I believe my words are very clear. We stake our lives to bring change in 2016, not to share a cake. We stake our lives to build a better country. And a better country is inconceivable without a better constitution. The government failed in 2016 up to the end of the term, and we are still failing. The government is still failing. So that is said. So I don't know, what is the relevance of that? All of us know that. Unless you want me to go to the mountaintop and shout and say, you fail, 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 so that it reverberates everywhere. There is no constitution of the Third Republic. That's utter failure. But at the same time, what do we want? What do we want? Because when something fails and you have opportunity to remedy it, and you refuse to remedy it, you are also part of that collective failure. You are also part of that collective failure. So failure of a government and failure of all those who are part of that collective failure must be announced for all of us to hear. And all of us should go back and become prisoners of our own conscience. That tomorrow posterity will ask us, when you had the opportunity to shape a better future, what did you do? What role did you play? That's an individual choice. It will answer that question for himself, herself.
So, if you may allow me just one question. We've seen the National Assembly last year, in the election bill that they're doing, they've increased the nomination for the president to 1 million and other things like 150,000. A lot of players in the political field have denounced this. What's your stance on that?
Well, I don't think you should even ask us. You know, this is why we said let's change Jammeh. We wrote an election, a petition to recommend electoral reform. Gambia Opposition for Electoral Reform. And the reply to that petition was to increase. Then they just reduced it to 500,000, but it was 1 million initially to stand as a presidential candidate. 50,000 National Assembly members, etc. I cannot remember all the figures. The political parties to be registered also same. So the idea then was to prevent people from being registered as political parties and also to participate in election. That's how we interpreted it. That ex-President Jammeh deliberately has decided to throw our recommendation back to our face. Therefore, for us, the route was to build a coalition to effect change. If you read Pdois' material, you will see Agenda 2015. You will see exactly those quotations of the figures, of the difficulties for the political parties, etc. So we felt that, well, we needed coalition building to do that. That was the objective of the coalition. So if those people who were part of the coalition can now come and make those laws, well, it just shows you the utter failure. I don't know what you want me to say anymore. Do you want me just to stand here and say failure, failure? Well, it shows that people do not necessarily believe in principles all the time. Sometimes you use those principles to fight for power. But when you have the power, then the principles may not necessarily be meaningful to you again. So let's see what ultimately they will come up with, because they've not gone to the third reading. Let's see what will happen. But essentially, this is the time to criticize every step they are taking to show that square one. Back to square one.
Anybody want to speak? Have a question? Colleagues, no? Sir, Mr. Chair?
I think you can even remember when the coalition took over, we met that 500,000. It was amended. We took a bill to the National Assembly to amend it. So all that was amended. So if you come now and you want to restore that, that will be a very interesting development.
Yeah, Yusuf Taylor again, Assembly Leader. My question goes to you, sir, Honorable. You did, Honorable Khalifa talked about the collective failure. Obviously, the 5th legislature, which all 3 of you were part of, we saw how Pdois voted. That was very clear. And of course, we've seen that consistency again in this 6th legislature. But regardless, the collective failure is there. But what many did not know was the reason why people like myself, maybe you might have answered this, I'm sure somebody else might have asked. Honorable Sidia, yourself, you did not vote on that fateful day. You did not say yes, you did not say no. And for some people, that is even the worst thing. Perhaps this is an opportunity for you to just explain what might have happened. I think at one point, Khalifa was trying to say that the bell should be rung. Or I don't know who was asking for the bell to be rung because some members were not in the chambers at that time. But, Honorable Sidia, can you tell us, can you tell Gambians, what happened until you didn't vote? In this time, all members voted. Yes, no, everybody voted. Please, sir, tell us.
Want to answer that? Well, you have an answer already, but you want to ask him a question. You know, the issue, it was more consultation than anything. It's not a position. It is precisely what he said, that when you step out, and all human beings must step out, you know, when you are in those chambers, and voting should take place, yes, you know, attention must be drawn that we are going to vote. But I think you understand the answer. But
maybe it's not for me to explain, but for him to tell now.
Okay.
Before I answer your question, let me say this. You see, a nation can never be built without critical minds. And that's the problem here. We have to have critical minds to build this nation. The law says that you, as a citizen of this republic, when you are of age, you have a right to vote and be voted for. And that is the fundamental law. And it stipulates, if you make any law contrary to that, it is null and void. Now the law gives you that right. Another law is made which says, but you cannot enjoy that right unless you provide $1 million or $150,000. Nobody is thinking about these things. The Constitution is a supreme law. It says that you have a right to stand for elections. But the other law is saying, but you cannot unless you provide 150,000. Suppose you don't have 150,000. What happens? They are denying your fundamental right. But you are not questioning that.
I'm going to
Wait. No. I don't want debate. You and I are not debating. I'm just I'm provoking you to use your minds. That's what I'm doing. And journalists have a fundamental role to play in this regard. To answer your question, you know the answer, but you want me to say it. I stepped out. By the time I came, they were already counting. I raised my hand. Even my colleague, he's not here, asked him in my absence, whoever. He was asking the speaker, but please allow him to vote. The speaker said no. What would I do? But if you follow the proceedings that day, when the bill was introduced, I was the first person who spoke. And if you were listening, I supported it without any reservation. So why wouldn't I have not voted for it? It's a very unnecessary question.
Up to many Gambians.
Anybody who has heard me,
Many Gambians, they want to know.
no, but they know.
No, not all of them.
Okay.
All right.
All
I can ask my second question.
Not-
Not to Honorable Khalifa. Thank you very much for clarifying that. As I've said, I had an idea because I did my asking around. But it's not for me to tell the people, it's for Honorable Celia to tell the people.
Now he has spoken.
Thank you very much, and I'm very grateful. So my question now, Honorable Khalifa, is about the rights of diaspora to vote. You've mentioned it. You've highlighted, and he also has, even in his first deliberation, touches on the importance of every citizen has the right to vote. The Electoral Act, or Bill, sorry, which is in Parliament, sought to ensure that the diaspora would be able to vote. There was a specific clause in there. Now that has been taken out. What should happen now? In fact, for some diaspora, there's a feeling that their right to vote, which would have been actualized by this bill, had it passed through with those provisions in there, has been taken away from them. And many of them, they had gone to court, they had sought a Supreme Court ruling. They've really been doing their own part to make sure that whichever doors that they could knock, that they could get the right to vote. What's your response to Parliament's apparent removal of that clause to stop the diaspora from having the ability to practice that right to vote? What's your reaction to that?
You know, it's very clear that the Constitution still remains. And whatever was taken to a Supreme Court based on that Constitution would always be interpreted the way the Constitution says it should be interpreted. There is no court in the Gambia ultimately that will say that a Gambian citizen must be denied a right to vote or to be registered as a voter, because that is a fundamental entrenched clause of the Constitution, that if you are 18 and you are a Gambian citizen, you are entitled to vote and to be registered as a voter. So a mechanism must be found to be able to do that. And that is why I am emphasizing now, rather than controversy, why don't we make it a national agenda so that that agenda will feature into the supreme law of the land, unquestionable. And when it is there, any law that contravenes it becomes null and void. So no matter what is said in the National Assembly, as long as it contradicts the supreme law, it becomes null and void. I hope that is clear.
It's indeed a pleasure to be part of this important session today. So my question would be, Pdois has always emphasized civic education. So what is the party specific steps you intend to take in proposing to build a public awareness around this constitution? Because you've just mentioned that we need a national consensus. So what are the steps that you intend to take to make sure people are really aware about this constitution?
Well, we are all assembled here, even though you are in the media, but I'm sure all of us will be able to gauge whether what is stated here is acceptable to the Gambian people. If we do accept that this would be acceptable to the people, that's when civic education will become absolutely essential. Not only by us, but we are saying it's a national conversation by all of us. So what is important is at this stage, every sector of Gambian society, civil as well as the political groups, should go back and make this a topic, the way forward for constitutional development of the country. We cannot accept 1997 to remain as it is. And I have emphasized, you see the approach I am taking. Some people felt, well, this is a constitution of a government that I supported. But you can see very clearly that no woman who is APRC should accept a 1997 constitution which tells you that you are equal in dignity with men, but does not give you any guarantee, any quota of representation in the councils, in the National Assembly, in the cabinet. So you cannot take ownership of that constitution. And that is the argument that is necessary. We need people to know that that constitution has inadequacies, and it's our duty to amend it so that it serves our purposes. Yes, that civic education will continue on our side, and we hope that we will not do it alone, that we will do it in unison with the Gambian people as a whole. So mu ngi mel ni ñëw nañ fi pour waxtaan ak yéen pareta pour ka naajang ka kaca timmandi doy ni banku dingol tema ñim banku la maral kango la kuñaka waxtaani tey bi ñu ngi ko jagleel doomi réew mi pour mun a seet li nga xam ne mooy baati réew ban solo la am ci réew naka la ñëwee tey jii ñu nekk fi ñu nekk ci wàllu defaraat suñu baati réew wax nañ ci biir wax ji ne soo gisee ñu nekk doomi Gambia tey baati réew a tax soo gisee Gambia am tey baati réew a tax te baati réew la ñuy ooyee constitution ñun ñëpp suñu jëf nguur gi jëfam doole yëpp fa lañ ko sës la mu wax mu ngi mel ni mooy li war a am ci doxalini réew men kumaat nga kalamuta ko bi mun keta Gambia di wot mal banko la maral kangola ya kent ni Gambia bi kering banko la maral kango wala ya kent banko buka tamano maral kango koma réew du mun a taxaw mukk ci gannaaw baati réew baati réew gi fi nekk tey nit ñu bari xëj na xamuñ li ci nekk wante amoon na jamono boo xam ne réew mi ci doole la doon wéyee ndax nguur dañ ko jëlee woon ci doole li nga xam ne mooy woon baati réew bi taxoon ñuy wote ñu jël seen tànk teg ko ci moo tax jamono boobu ñoom ñooy defar loi ku leen neex ñu jàpp kenn amatul baat kenn amatul doole ci réew loolu na foo ko gis mu ngi mel ni république amatu fa ndax suñ ne réew génn na ci ron buur yi mooy ne buur amatul doole amatul baat ñu ne kana am doole mooy nit ñi ñoo am doole ñoo am baat bon nag nguur doxalinam dafa war a sukkandiku ci baati nit ñi yëf yi ëlbati ko bu njëkk nit ñi seen doxalin dafa war a sukkandiku ci baati ak doole nguur mooy buur ñu ne nag ëlbati nañ ko léegi nguur dafa war a doxinam tam dafa war a sukkandiku ci baati doomi réew mi ak doole doomi réew mi loolu mooy république même mu bankooti may yaalon ko molle tam molla maral kango wala ka tamaji wala mu république ot molbe e ñin kalamu takko kabirin coup d'état kete kante mol bul sembote mol bul bawo sembole nata ka wo burka sembe tiol wole ka banko mara ila kan wole ka tama mune wo fale wole mu maral kan ka même fo constitution mol ko hani wo manke tama de nyaati men ya kende mole kelo ke fo afrika ya fang soto tama de nyaame nyanta tara soto le wole mu mol la kago maralal nyanta tamala wole kan mol la sembo wala nyanta yitandele jumale nyanta banko marla wala ya kendi constitution sotata referendum keta for 1997 constitution sotata ka bring a sotata mu ne keta wote wol keta mo la kango hani ni ya nasindi bari albe sonto ko 2016 wo kango wala ya falel ronat oto wo kango kumba tele an woya tonya yande sembo aye mo men ngati mo la kango wala yala sembo bay mu melni bi nga xamé ne ñoo nañ be doole tok coup d'état xew ñoom seen doole ak seen baat taxaw dañ ne li tax ñu dogoon buumi njaam gi mooy suñ baat taxaw suñ doole taxaw moo taxoon ñu ne nañ seetaat naka la ñoo delloowaat isiwaat baati réew mu taxaw nekk baati réew léegi loolu tax ñu am constitution ba mu amee gis ngeen ne wote dafa door di am dëgg la amoon na ay jafe-jafe yu bari waaye taxul wote yi continuer te wote boobu moo isi soppeeku gi nga xam moo amoon 2016 mu mel ni bon ki nga xam ne doole la moo ko isi woon ñëw na bi nga xam ne baat moo ko fa génnee bon nag doomi Gambie bu nekk nag dañ war a fullaal baat boobu te moo waral suñu waxtaani tey ne baat boobu ba wecceeku bi amee dañu ne lu nekk dañ koy beesalaat li nga xam ne manqué na ci nañ jéem ñu xamu ko su ko defee dinañ mun a am luñ ca soppi ndax mu nekk liy gën a dëggal suñu doomu réew yaa gën a dëggal suñu baat gën a dëggal suñu doole suñ ne république rek mooy ne yaa ngi dëggal baati nit ñi yaa ngi dëggal doole nit ñi li nit ñi soxla ñi nga xam ne ñoo leen jiite fokk ñu def loolu te looloo taxoon ñu ne ñu wecc ci réew mi ñu ne nag ñu bari tey dañ def mbiri baati réew mi mu nekk mbiri parti am na ñoo xam ne sax dañ ne ah bi ñoo defar baati réew mi njiit ji moo fi nekkoon te man moom laa àndaloon bon nag du ma nangu ñu wecc ci gannaawam li nga xam ne moo ko fi samp am na ñuy xalaatee noonu moo tax ci biir waxtaan wi ñu njëkkee laajte ne leen ci baati réew moomu 1997 constitution bunte ñaar fukki ak juróom-ñett dañu wax ne jigéen dañu war a dëggal giddaam ci réew ba nga xam ne manoora gi war a am mooy góor li mu war a am rek ndax ñu jox ko cëram ne itam ci wàllu doxalinu nguur daf ci war a am cër koom-koom am ci cër doxalinu réew mi ci boppam daf ci war a am cër loolu lañ bind foofu ne suñoo samp nag place yi nga xam ne place yi njiit la ci bunte ñaar téeméer fukk ak ñeneen ñu ne bon nag dañu war a jox jigéen ñi seen cër ñaar téeméer fukk ak juróom ñu ne su fekkee ne wàllu koom-koom la itam dañu war a cëral jigéen ñi loolu yëpp ñu ngi ko fa bind waaye ñaata jigéen ñoo nekk ci néegi député yi tey ñaata ñoo nekk ci council yi ñaata ñoo nekk ci wàllu cabinet bi mu mel ni loolu wane nañ ko mu nekk aîné wante aîné nag balaa moo nekk dëgg foog nga def ko loi loi du aîné loi dañ koo dëggal ne lii moo war a am mu dal di nekk force li nga xam ne nag moo nekk ci baati réew moom yu bari moom aîné la ak ci yëpp dëggaluñu ko moo tax ñu ne léegi su fekkee nag ne bugg ngaa cëral jigéen yi ci biir këyit googu baati réew moomu foog nga defaraat fa loo xam ne lii loi laa dal di nekk ni muy nekk député muy council muy président bi ne su fekkee ne ñu ngee ut ña fa war a nekk soo ko xaajee ñetti xaaj benn xaaj ba na nekk xaaj yi pour jigéen nga dëggal ko ba nga xam ne pour xaaj boobu sax ci néegi député yi di nga ko def mu nekk wote jigéen yi rek ku leen neex na parti bu la nekk nga taxawal wala indépendant waaye yéen ay taxaw su ko defee ci sànni ba ku ci gañe nga dem toog ci néegi député yi nga xam ne jigéen ñi war nga leen a bàyyi xel ndax jigéen yi rek ñoo taxoon nga taxaw pour kàddu jigéen mun a am ci néegi député yi loolu mun nga koo def ci baati réew ñi nga xam ne nekk nañ bitim réew di dugal alal fii alal yoo xam ne moo ëpp li nga xam ne li ngeen a jaayee ci at bitim réew ñoom alal yi ñoo dugal ci réew mi moo ëpp alal jooju ah bon nag ñu ne ñooñu war nga leen a jox cër war ngaa dëggal seen baat ci réew mi nekk bitim réew rek taxul ne ba tey doomi Gambie lañu te gis nañ doomi Guinée Bissau yi doomi Sénégal yi ñëpp su seen waxtu wote jotee dañuy wote fii lu tax doomi Gambie duñu wote fële loolu mu ngi mel ni ñu ngi xeeblu suñu bopp mu mel ni moo tax ñu wax ne bon nag loolu itam foog ñu jëlaat baat boobu nga xam ne dëggaloon na ne doomi Gambie dafa war a wote dëggaloon ne doomi Gambie dafa war a am carte wote wane nag ñu xañ ko doomi Gambie nekk ci biti ñu ne bon nag baati réew moomu war na koo déggal ba nga xam ne kenn du sañatee def loolu ñu ne soo seetee baati réew mi nga xam ne moo fi newoon te nekk fi ba tey ñu ne dafa xañ doomi Gambie ni nit su fekkee ne taxaw na wote su ko neexee dafa continuer taxaw rek mun na fee nekk ñett fukki at wante réew yi yëpp yi ëpp ci suñ gox bi fii léegi dañu ne soo taxawee ñaari yoon rek jeex na mu ne mënatuloo passé fukki at soo demee Ghana ak Nigeria sax ñoom ñeneenti at juróom-ñetti at la ñeneenti at réew yu mag yooyu c'est ni fi Nigeria ak fi Ghana ya ñu ngi laa jox ñeneenti at nga jeexal ci mooy na nguur kenn du fa nekk rek di ko xabaabal amul njëriñ amul solo waa lii mu mel ni amul ci baati réew mi fi nekk lu tax duñ ko fa dugal ñu ne wote su amee nga am téeméer ñu ne soo amul juróom fukk ak benn bon doo ñu jiite foog ñu am wote ñaareel loolu yëpp pour dimbale askan wi ndax ñu mun a tànn njiit yoo xam ne nit ñi ñoo leen fa taaj nekkul ci baati réew mi bon nag ba ñu jëlee réew mi ci 2016 dañu waxoon ne nañ seggaat baati réew mi nga xam ne moo fi newoon jéem a seet li ci manqué ñu am luñ ci dugal pour gën koo beesalaat ndax mu jëriñ askan men yaa kendi kabiri falengoo ket mool sita kaa jiibee ko banko la maral kango mo nyanta kuta kuta yandila wala mo nyenti ko bi dolbe je e ka fogo ntede mo APRC le tunu so sañi bawo ñile mo maral kango to be yalla ko wuto wo wato ko woto nta sonna ay burka bal ni musol ñinin ka bi wo maral ko ay na fa menna jamaata fo nola tonya wo maral kango kono abunda mol aning se ako musol nyanta buñalale ko kelbe buñari ñami banko fo fanko la bundale fo politiko la bundale fo tamande la bundale ado la bunda be musol nyanta ile yana niol sotoje ya bambandi je bak abunda keme fula tang anin nani ko nibe ñaaton kaya palaso dikam molla fo cabinet lembang fo national assembly musol fana ñanta ala niyo sotaleje banko la fanko la bunda fana musol ñanta le niyo sotaleje woto ñim bebe safarin je bal fo wo ketale ba amanke bawo wu muhammolet hammo anil loi manki kilet banko me ya lon ko loi le ka sabati je e ka muneke e ka foko ni député bon tala sidula sabala sidula killing force lebo fo ayeke musol la siramot yalo ni wo be safari banko la baraka mot woto fo woyeke bari amantara safarin je wala yakene mol ko wo malal kango nyanka kuta kuta yandile so ni ko fanan cabinet ni ya tala sidula sabala sidula killing nyanta kala musol wo fanan nakata luwat maral kangot ibajal ko forcer lim pour woyeke ni ko loi mu forcer ko let men yalo ko nyantolem forcer ayeke wole ya kende molko kabirin falen woketa siyo nyante kera kroso yoke ko men yalo ko asi wo maral kango kuta yandi asi hadama dugol nafa be hakkilo soto yela hakkilo bulande je pour woyeke angale kan woto ni ko constitutional reform wala mo ka maral kango kuta yanti pour ka beta yanti suñ ne ci angale constitutional reform moy ne li baati rew mi ñu beesalaat ko li ci manki ñu dugal ko fa li fa nekk ñu war koo dëgëral ñu yokk ko lii moo woon jubluwaay bi biñ essayé wecceeku ci 2016 mu mel ni njiiti coalition bi yëpp dañoo doon ànd bokk benn xalaat taxawal ay ndaw ñu segg li nga xam ne mooy baati réew mi ñu bokk ci ay xalaat ak ñoom loolu lañ foogoon ne nag moo dooroon te xalaat yu bari nekk ko ci woon bañoo door ndax dañu waxoon ne wecceeku bi am di wecceeku parti doomi Gambie ñoo booloo fàtte seen parti fàtte seen bugg-bugg yi nañu ànd ñu isi soppeeku ne gannaaw soppeeku gi ñu ne nañ toog ñetti at yoo xam ne ñetti ati liggéey laa doon segg baati réew mi segg luwaay yi segg doxali bunti nguur ki segg xalaat ci nekk ci bunte yooyu yokke eete gi ñëpp xam li war a dox ci lopitaan yi ak liggéeykati lopitaan ak liggéeykati nguur naka la war a demee su ko defee ci biir ñetti at yooyu dinañ soppi doxalin boo xam ne ñëpp ko moom ndax ñëpp ci dugal seen xel ak seen xalaat ni kon tey ji ooye nañ suñ boppa Third Republic mooy amoon nañ ci jamono Jawara demoon nañ bi am baati réew mu bees ñu ooye ko Fourth Republic boo xam ne baati réew mi ñoo ko moom te mooy fal nguur di ko folli ñu dem ba ci Second Republic ñu taxawalaat beneen baat beesalaat ko ñu doon bugg a dem nag ci third republic boo xam ne bii da ngeen fàttaleku ne 2016 Gambia ca jamono jooju musuta am benn soppeeku ci carte wote boobu mooy njëlbeen mu mel ni foofu da nga war a dooraat foofu lañ bëggoon a dooraat nag dem ci li ñoo ooyee third republic nga xam ne foofu ñëpp xam nañ seen bopp ku nekk xam na ne am na baat kenn duñ ko doyadil ci réew mi ku nekk xam na cëram su ko defee njiit dina liggéey pour askan wi njiit dina jëriñ askan wi njiit du jëriñoo askan wi lii mooy woon jubluwaay wante ci gàttal pour jeexal wax ji dem nañ loolu amul mooy ñetti ati nguur boo xam ne nguuri jàppandal la nguuri ñépp la wante ba tey itam nag dañ ñu éene woon ñoom ci seen wax ne dinañ am baati réew mu bees boo xam ne soo seetee ni Nigeria ñaari at ñaari yoon la nit di taxaw ñeneenti at Ghana ñaari yoon ñeneenti at lu tax Gambia dangaa xabaabal mun nga fee taxaw ñett fukki at ndax suñ baati réew mi waxu ko réew yooyu soo amee élection soo amul juróom fukk ak benn ci téeméer doo toog foog nga am wote ñaaral lu tax Gambie amul loolu waaw lii moo tax ñu ne baati réew mi ni mu mel foog ñu beesalaat ko ñoom nag ñu taxawaloon siyaar si ñu nekk ay boroom xam-xam sas leen jox leen xaalis ne nañ gëstu fu nekk ci àddina bi lu jàkk rek nañ ko dugal ci baati réew ñu def ko lañ mun ñu def ko ñu jël loolu dal di ko isi jox président bi ñu isi ko ci néegi député yi fii lañ bugg a ngeen xam ko ne seen député yi kenn ëpp leen solo ci réew mi ndax ñoom ñooy defarkati luwaay ñu ne loi pour defar ko dafa dooree ci éene moom la ñu ooyee bil kayiti éene mooy bil li nga éene moom ngaa def ci kayit gi ministre mun naa isi kayit National Assembly committee ya fa nekk mun nañoo isi kayiti éene National Assembly ba seen bopp mun nañoo isi kayiti éene ñu ne nag soo isee kayiti éene googu National Assembly yi ñoo koo segga moo tax ñu ne National Assembly mooy defarkati loi National Assembly members si ñoo koo segga ñu defar leen un bunt nag ni ñoo seggee loolu lañ bugg nag ngeen déglu bu baax ndax dañ day faral di wax ne kii jàngul déggul anglais si ko defee nga xawma dara gis ngeen ne loolu lay ñëw pour wecci ne soo nekkee doomi réew rek da nga am baat am doole te sa baat boobu ak doole boobu da nga ko war a da nga ko war a wéer ci loi dafa war a sukkandeku ci loi bon nag war ngaa xam loi ak ni ñu koy defaree ñu ne ni ñoo defaree loi mooy soo isee kayiti éene gi loi benn yaa ngee tere dara wala yaa ngee fekk dara wala yaa ngi bugg a dara sax wala yaa ngi bugg a pour yaatal dara loi foog mu am jubluwaay loi booy defar rek am jubluwaay moo tax ñu ne suñ isee kayiti éene ci néegi député yi gannaaw loi bu nekk dafa war a am jubluwaay bon nag député yi liñ war a njëkk a waxtaanee mooy jubluwaay yi charte bi lu tax ñuy koo dugal lan la bëgg a tere lan la bëgg a isi ñu mun a xam ndax lii njëriñu askan wi la ah man nag député yi seen place dafa fort ñu jox leen nag ñoom ñu jëfoo seet moo tax seen li ñoo njëkk a wote mooy seet ndax loi ba am na jubluwaay purpose ci anglais ndax am na jubluwaay soo leen déggee li ñoo ooyee second reading ñu ne soo isee kayit yi éene gi ci néegi député yi li njëkk a war a xew mooy ñu njëkk a waxtaan ci wàllu jubluwaayu loi ba ndax xam ndax am na njëriñ ndax amul njëriñ ndax am na bunte yu am njëriñ ak bunte yu amul njëriñ ñoom ñooy seet luy jubluwaayu loi ba moom la ñu ooyee second reading moo tax ci baati National Assembly bi ci bunte juróom-benn fukk ya ak juróom-benn ñu ne li ñu war a njëkk a wote ci député mooy suñ seggee liy jubluwaayu loi bi dinañ ci wote seet ndax li am na njëriñ ñu continuer seet li nga xam ne mooy bunte yi la wala amul njëriñ bi ko bugguñu di tardeel seen bopp ci lu ñàkk fay waaw su fekkee nag waxtaan nañ ba gis ne dëgg-dëgg lii dañ ko war a fulaal war nañoo li ñuy wax ne moom lañ bëgg a wécci jar naa wécci liñ bëgg a beesal jar naa beesal ci gàttal su ko defee ñu jàllale ko suñ ko jàllalee nag ñoom député yooyu ñooy toog tabax seen kuréel gi nag jël nag bunte yi di ko segg benn benn ba pare laaj askan wi lu ci seen xalaat su askan wi waxee ba pare ak boroom xam-xam yi njiiti diine njiiti aada yi mboolem koo xam ne kii am na kàddu jigéen yi góor yi ndaw yi ñépp ñoo xam ne ñii am nañ kàddu ca loi ba wax seen wax ñoom député yi nag dañoo jël loola dal di ko ñëw waxtaanee waat ci néegi député yi su ko defee comité bañ sos mooy ñëw nag biral kàddu ne lii lañ jëlee ci askan wi ci bunte yii ci loi bi bunte yii de téye nañ ne baax na bunte yi la day ñoom dañ téye ne daal buñ ci sonal suñu bopp mu ngi mel ni bon su jàllee foofa député yi nag ci la ñoo door di toog pour seet nag bunti loi bi bunte bu nekk suñ ko seggee dañ caa wote segga wote ba bam jeex lañ wote loolooy nekk loi ah ba nag député yi ñooy defar loi koo yónni ci néegi député yi rek xamal ne defarkati loi la doole boobu la gaa yi am constitution nag dafa nekk lu fort mooy baati réew ci yéen la war a jógee moo tax ñu ne gannaaw boo ko defaree soo ko buggee wëcci bunte yi nga xam ne dafa am maanaa mu ngi mel ni bunte biy wane ne mënuloo am buur yaa ci suufi Gambia ne nguur goo taxawal nit ñi ñoo ko war a taxawal su la neexee ñu folli ko bunte boobu soo ko buggee wëcci ñu ne nguur mënu koo wecci de néegi député mënuñ koo wecci de foog ñu am référendum suñu àq yi pour sàmm ko foog nga dem référendum pour laal ko looloo day isi référendum moo tax nag kuréel gi nga xam ne moom lañ sampoon dañ leen santoon ñu laal lépp moo tax ñoom kayiti éene bi ñu isi lépp la ëmba moo tax baati réew mi dafa wax ne su député yi demee ba wote benn ci baat yi ba taxawal ko foog ñu wote waat pour yépp suñu wote waatee pour yépp soo ko xaajee ñetti xaaj yi d'accord ci lañ koy yóbbu nag mu dem référendum loolu su ñëwee ci ñun nag ñun nit ñi ñooy wote ñu ne ñu bindu pour am carte wote yépp foog juróom fukki xaaj ya dem wote ji lu ko mooy rek yàqu na juróom fukki xaaj ya suñ demee wote ji soo lañ xaajee ñeneenti xaaj foog ñetti xaaj yi ne waaw d'accord nañ ci loola dal di ñëw nekk baati réew mu bees ñu ne Gambie am na baati réew mu bees bon nag wax ji dina gàtt fii ngeen déglu ko fu bu baax ñu xam li xew ak fan lañ jublu CRC bi ñu defaree seen kayiti éene ñu isi ko ci néegi député yi war a segg jubluwaay bi seet ndax jubluwaay bi am na maanaa mooy pour ñu war a seggaat baati réew mi nga xam ne moo fi nekk pour beesalaat ko te loolu dara ëpp ko maanaa ñu bàyyi nag CRC éene bi ñu am pour def ko mu nekk loi ñu bàyyi ko mu jàll pour député yi isi ko ci askan wi député yi ci jamono boobu dañ leen joxoon ne soo xaajee député yi ñeneenti xaaj su ñetti xaaj yi waxee waaw dinañ def loolu su mutul ñetti xaaj nag dinañ ko dàq mututoon ñetti xaaj ñu dàq ko mel ni fa la affaire bi yàqoo nguur gi jëlaat mu waroon a waxtaanaat ak askan wi ñun ñëpp ñu waxtaanaat seet ay bunta ñoom dañ dem rek ne dinañ mën a defal seen kayiti bopp ñu defal seen kayiti bopp biñ ko isee itam li nga xam ne moom la ci loi santaane mooy ne gannaaw ñoom dañ def seen mbiri bopp ba tey itam député yi ñoo leen waroon a wan ne soo leen defee seen mbiri bopp ba isi ko fii taxul ngeen mun koo jàllale bon pour dimbale askan wi ñoom waroon nañoo fexe itam gannaaw foog mu demaat ci bunti seetaat jubluwaay bi ndax jàllale ko pour ñu seet bunte yi daanaka loolu moo waroon a xew ci fan yii wante boobu itam ñu dàqaat ko mu mel ni fi mu nekk nii 2016 baati réew mañ fa fekkoon ba tey jii moo fa nekk te baat boobu war nañ leen manqué gi ñu leen a yëgal itam ne baat yi nga xam ne baati réew la nekkoon éene bi CRC bugg a isi dafa amoon lu ci manqué bi ñoom biñ bëggoon a isi dafa am lu ci manqué ñu ne buñ mun a isi rek ci éene rek xamal ne am na lu ca manqué député yi ñoo war a seet manqué te gi ñu génnee ko bon nag wax ji nekkul ñeneen dàqoon nañ bale dàqaat bi mooy ne baat boo mun a isi rek xamal ne député yi war nañ caa segg la nga xam ne mooy manqué te ñu génnee loola léegi nag loolu xewul ba tey jii Gambia mu mel ni yéen jigéen ñi amul benn bunta ci baati réew mi bu leen jox cëri ne di ngeen bokk ci doxalinu réew mi ci wàllu député néegi député yi bokk ci doxalinu réew mi ci wàllu cabinet bi nekku fa ñu nekk ci diaspora bi itam wax nañ ne war ngeen a wote waaye ni ñu ko war a dégëralee boobu itam nekkul ci baati réew mi fi nekk nii foog ñu ut mu ñoo fexe ñu gën koo dëgëral soo seetee bunte yi nga xam ne mooy taxaw ñaari yoon ba doo xaabaabal nekku fa juróom fukk yeeg benn fekk amuloo ko doo mun a nekk président ba nga am wote ñaareel nekku fa mu mel ni lii yëpp dañ ko war a seetaat moo tax ñun li ñoo wax mooy ne gannaaw ñoom neenal nañ kayiti éene yooyu nga xam ne mënoon nañoo yóbbu ci loolu fan lañ jëm fi mu nekk nii ñu ne gannaaw bunte ñaar fukk ak juróom-benn may nañu doole ba tey pour ñu mun a soppi li nga xam ne mooy baati réew mi bon nag lii amatul parti nañ ne ñun doomi Gambia gannaaw baat bi suñu baat la nañ door waxtaani doomi réew waxtaani parti ñu seetaat baat bi nga xam ne moo fi nekk te am ay manquité yoo xam ne mun nañ koo beesalaat ndax àddina naw ñu ku nekk wax sa xalaat lan nga bëgg ñu beesalaat su ko defee ñu boole loolu yëpp mu nekk benn xalaat ñu teg ko ci loxo nguur gi teg ko ci loxo député yi su ko defee nguur gi seetaat bu gaaw naka la ñoo isee beneen kayiti éene boo xam ne dina ëmb yooyu ndax ñu mun a beesalaat baati réew mi fa nekk lii mooy suñu kàddu men ku mbayaata wala mu kaa kalamuta ko kabrin banko falinta 2016 hammumu mentinu ka jama mararoki jama maroro me yalon ko ate kela pati marot pour mun kam ka banko la maral kango ka croisi ka kuta yen ala chartol ka croisi ka kuta yen ke kuta ko nen ke croisi ke kuta ko yen tamandiri nya bundalu koku me yalon ko nsa kuta yen no nga kuta yen so baji ko sanji sabo kono Gambia kuto be wurula banko la maral kuto be wurula insa fo non dunta tar republic ko le ko ñing le muhammadu amanke wo ñaama ñaawo ñaa yellahi de nun ko hani ka bi banko la maral kawo insa kuto yendino ye CRC le londi pour asi jama kacha mi ya lonko e nsinyo kacha nyoya pour kalo mumbunda lebe maral kango kono nsi mem bondino mumbunda lebe nsi fen kafuno je nga kafu yele crossero ke fokaba ya nati depuis bon mot e ko pour loi ye dada banko kan silo bala an wo silo nyanta kala mutalale mu silo lebeje banko la maral kango ko alka député tombom pour député le loi dada wala kendi ka loi dada aka folo hammole la ika men hamme ika wole safe wole ke angale kango to bil ika wole safe ay ke hamme kayitoti wo hamme kayito ni ya nati depuis bonot mo me ya lonko e be president la bundato ministalu wo sa natino si la hamme kayito nati député fanan ay député bungo fanan ay kafo soto comité soto wol fanan si la hamme kayito nati mo kilinkilnal même député si fanan ici la hamma kayto naati woto hamma kayto kana wonya député bu ngoto na futata adunta ku folo wala mu kalon fo hammo atimmata bang wala aman timma janni ibe dunna bundato mun ya kende e ka hammo jibe folo bawo luwa bu ka dada kensen e ka luwa dada pour que fem bay ika luwa dada pour que bali mol bali fenna ika luwa dada pour que ko sabatini bawo abetat ika luwa dada pour que wo nati because abetat woto ika luwa dada kule kam wala mu purpose wala ya kenni na banko la maral kan waye même fo député la do ko folo wala mu ka hammo jibe folo wala mo ka propose jibe ka hammo jibe fo misali fa même fo 1997 constitution ay ko joma fo musol la karola bari amanna ke bawo amam bunda sabatinde je men sa kendi woto ni ko banko la maral kango anyanta falelna wala mu daliloti angale kango to wala mu propose wala mu la daliloti wala ñanta jibe la fonko dalilo bala pour nga fali na kuta yande wala yakandi député la do ko folo mu muneti an wala mu second reading wala mu ka hammo jibe folo ka cross fo ñing anyanta mala le bang wala amanyana mala ni sonto ko ñanta mala na kete constitution la hamma kaytoti folo e ko ni e député bu ngon tala sidula nani la sidula sabab fo woy ko ha nyin kay hammo aseniatale ko bunda même bidang a nyanta malale nyanta nyin kuta yenda ye kambalo ko mola woto woye tambi so ibajalo ko wo tambi ta second reading akata minto akata committee bulu wo committee wala do ko mu muneti ka croiseroki ka dum mol kono ke ninenka ka molla miraya suñayi bulo kalom mun ñanta sotola mun ñanta kala nakete constitution ati dina dum kiol be ninenkala dina ñaton ko la kuña be ninenkala ada ñaton ko la kuña be ninenkala musolu fondin kelu mo bebe la miraya fola wala mu comité stage ni wo kacha keta fo ko seniyata ya lonko molla hamo yitata nyimbundal beto e kamuru député bungoto kela reporto di kela kibaro di ye men soto mol bulu ka yitande mol yalo wo kacha na banta amunto ko ye député be kibar yandi pour ye molla hamolon mol ya mira yalo bawo nibe ku tamandela molla nafaka ñanta molla mira yalo na woto lu adada mu hakkili kendolati na keta a ñama isa lonko banko a ñanta marala woña ni ko démocratie banko woto ni wokkata foy kacata sañi amunto ko député be membe je ya long mu nebe mo la hakkilo kon alwa sañi isi tayel wadada ibe wo hamna kayto tala wala mu consideration ce ibe nala koteke ka lumuta ka hamma kayto ta bunda nim bunda ka crossé ka bulo ciot ka bulo wolindi ka crossé ka bulo wolindi ka fo beye bam e sonta menna wole ka laaje ayeke chartoti mais ya lonko sañi e be tala ka bulo wolindi kotake ayta tag reading na tambita je na kete constitution oti ya samba referendum ni ya samba referendum ibe mol kibari yandi la ye même bula je dali ba jele ko mol be wala jibe la wote lalu ni yeta talasi dula kemela fosil dula tanlulu ye wote woke janni wo wote wo barka wosi dula tanlulu fana ni ye wote woke ni ye talasi dula nanla fosi dula saba ye sonko wo mo loi kendolete janni avec la loi ko kake tenne bari folo ye kafo men londi fo ay hamme kayto dada fo anata de filo bongoto inata folo 2020 pour que wo hamme kayto ala dalilo ka jibe ka crossé ka kacha ya bay nim fana e nata ko tade ya bay oto be mento sañi bankola maral kan membe jan since 1997 sanji muang anin sey ñina amundo ko hani kebi wole beji an wole be continue la fokku yeke fo banko ni wol ñetta sila doron ka wo jibe wala fo fere do be je men ya lonko sa kuta yande nyin kacha la nafa mo walet to la karola ko maral kan be mo be kunna amanke pati kuti amanke musukuti amanke ke kuti mo be le tam anyanta mo be le tankala woto mo be la kacham pour ka jibe mun ñanta kelaje pour nga kuta yanti hani ni mam be falen nga demanding falen je kilim ka time limit ke bawo Nigeria a warata nya wonya ni sita sanjinal ya fulanja abanta Ghana be nyame wala be je banku jama ni sita sanjilun ye lola kan abanta woto wole mutamane da kendot woto wonyanta dunna ne banku la maral kan woto aman taraje ni woto la talata sido la kemela ni tandulu anin kilim man wote ite sila fo nga fulanja wo fanan si dunnoje muso fanan ni ko illa fita yeni yo soto banko kan kana foto ayke talin kuti ayke isa tonya yandi iba tonya yandi la iba kala luwat so luwasi dada no ay dum constitution kono ko fo député bu ngolam fo council lemba fo cabinet lemba ni ya tala sidula sa fo sidula kilin ayke musolti musol la niyoti banko la tamandel nyaatu mol même Gambia dingo membe banta fanan fo ngake constitutional kono ay sabati ko ila hakko banku ding ya hakko mo ba bunya la yibul ibe wote wakela inyanta kala nyam woton tol nyanta nyimbe le cross la kilingo kiling parti ni be parti kono ni be civil society kono kafol kono nyimbe le mon kuti me ya lon ko anyanta kacala banko be kan kilingo kiling yela kafo soto yela kachake ya jibe fo fen lul lembang fo fen nan lembang fo fen woro lembang fo sey lembang ku me ya lon ko ite fe ñing si banko la maraka mo kuta yandi ya dundi mirango ko sun to be nga dundi mirango ko be sonko ñing la janta tamala e bantalan ko le benala UN benala e khos benala e yu benala ni ñaaton ko ñaata je mo je be ko Gambia ko lafita men wala mo ñinti sani lafita membe mararola ay ñing tamanti yakata ye hamme kayto naati juna nga ñimbe topoto nga banko la maraka mo ko amuntu ko ni nga tamande ten banko be tala banko dingol la ni wala ka banko dingol te fola ila hakola ila niola ila banko kan Gambia dingol la tamu Gambia men ñanta tamala jang Gambia dingol la ñanta fa Gambia dingol la ka ñaton ko to mon ke bondi oto ñaton ko ñanta tarala je mo la kan wala kan bari ni Gambia dingol man kan soto do because banko fo ay kan soto wote ke no la kambe ngo koma wote ke no la fahamuro koma wote ke no la tonya koma fo nga tonya long nga fahamuro nyini nga soto ntol be nga song wo faharumo ma wo tonyama nga kambe wo kan banko sike mo la sawote alnimba.
Islamic microfinance is becoming an increasingly popular mechanism for poverty alleviation, especially for developing countries around the world. This microfinance service adheres to the principles of Islam as a form of social responsibility. Yona Islamic Microfinance is the Islamic microfinance of choice in the Gambia, trustworthy and reliable. At Yona Islamic Microfinance, we provide savings products, current accounts, financing products in conformity with Islam. In addition, Yona Islamic Microfinance also offers local and international remittances, Takaful Fund, management of Zakat, management of Awqaf, trading and investment, and building of strategic partnerships to bring financial services to the doorstep of the poor with donor projects, madrasas, youth organizations, women groups, and farmer organizations. Make a choice with Yona Islamic Microfinance today. For more information on Yona Islamic Microfinance, call 377-2151 or 9832-151 or visit Yona head office at Tipa Garage, Bakote, or visit any Yona branch located countrywide near you.
Ya bari biyo ken kontan batale. Bari inatal pour kan bullo ko jibe.
Ito kontan tale makura bari ala ya lonte mon kontan de. Makura kana nyina ko teninte belbe tuba dudula kilimoto.
Ko moto nyal tikay.
Ngoko di baka to ki nan jang pour yena dula dada ni tata na dula to makura ala ya long njuso malla ama hani futa dula to dula din anu birite loro commencé woni bitema ama hani me
no ama me to nyalom
ke bara fonye mun muy la kulloti
ndela kullu balu waldi
balu
ha
way fo balu ko loro fanankel
ikal loro fanankele
ñin kunna soniata ta www.baluwo.com anim baluwo isela bulloran jorangol be sang anila kudula asatare mambata jorangol membu ko sementol kenyo babarol nil peruol woni nga nyon jamal ta baluwo.com yin jorangol be sang ila dinkira bado adungite batala je anim baluwo ifangole marate la kudula